The first light of dawn crept over the mist-shrouded hills, painting the lake in hues of silver and slate. Elena Vargas stood on the weathered dock of her family's old property, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and pine. The lake had been hers since her parents passed, 20 acres of quiet water tucked into the valleys outside Chicago, a forgotten gem amid the sprawl of the city. She inherited it not for its beauty, but for the solitude it promised, a place to escape the grind of her job as a freelance environmental consultant, fighting developers who saw every green space as a dollar sign. But this morning, something was wrong. The waterline lapped higher than usual, and in the center, like a brazen intruder, floated a half-constructed barge. Scaffolding jutted from its decks, and floodlights hummed faintly even in the pre-dawn hush. Elena squinted, her breath fogging in the chill. Who the hell builds on private water without a permit? She pulled out her phone, snapping photos as the structure came into focus. A floating restaurant by the looks of it. Elegant arches promised luxury, but the construction was sloppy, hasty. Barges like this needed approvals from the county, the EPA, maybe even the Coast Guard. Her lake wasn't some public waterway. It was hers, bordered by her land on 3 sides. A low rumble echoed from the shore, a diesel generator kicking on, and she caught the distant clank of metal. Workers, at this hour. She'd heard whispers in town about a new player in the city's underbelly. Marco Rossi, they called him. Not the old-school mobsters with their pinstripes and codes, but a sharper breed, real estate sharks with ties to the syndicates that ran the docks and the unions. Rossi had been snapping up properties along the riverfront, turning warehouses into clubs. But this? Encroaching on a private lake felt personal, like a dare. Elena's pulse quickened as she paced the dock, the wood creaking under her boots. She'd drained sections of the lake before for maintenance, using the old irrigation pumps her father installed decades ago. It was legal on her property, a way to control erosion or check the bed for debris. But draining enough to ground that barge, that would send a message. By midday, Elena had her plan. She drove into town, the lake's reflection shrinking in her rear view as asphalt gave way to the hum of the city. At the county office, she pored over records. No permits filed for her parcel. The clerk, a wiry man with coffee-stained fingers, shrugged. Rossi Enterprises? They move fast. Heard they're opening a spot called Aqua Noir. Floating fine dining, they say. But yeah, nothing on your lake. Elena's jaw tightened. Fast meant bribes, or worse, intimidation. She thanked him and headed to the hardware store, loading her truck with extra hoses and seals for the pumps. Back home, as dusk fell, the lake turned to glass, mirroring the sodium glow of distant highway lights. Crickets chorused from the reeds, and the air smelled of impending rain. That night, under a sliver of moon, Elena worked alone. The pumps whirred to life, ancient but reliable, siphoning water into the adjacent creek bed her father had engineered for overflow. She adjusted the valves, watching the level drop inch by inch. The barge, now lit by construction lamps, seemed to sag slightly as the water receded. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but adrenaline. What if they had guards? She scanned the shadows with a flashlight, but the site was quiet. Workers gone for the night. By 2 a.m., the lake had shrunk to a muddy expanse, the barge tilting precariously on the exposed bed. Elena wiped sweat from her brow, the metallic tang of machinery mixing with the earthy reek of wet soil. She'd reclaim her peace, or at least force a conversation. Dawn broke with chaos. Elena watched from her porch, coffee steaming in her mug, as a black SUV tore down the access road, tires spitting gravel. It skidded to a halt near the pumps, and out stepped a man who could only be Marco Rossi. Tall, broad-shouldered, with salt and pepper hair cropped close, and a suit that screamed tailored menace, he stared at the stranded barge like it was a personal betrayal. His face twisted, first confusion, then fury. "What the fuck is this?" he bellowed, voice carrying across the waterless expanse. Two men in dark jackets flanked him, hands hovering near their belts, but Rossi waved them back. He strode to the water's edge, now a slurry of mud, and kicked at a exposed rock. The barge groaned, its hull scraping the lake bed with a sound like tearing metal. Elena stepped out, heart pounding but chin high. She wasn't some scared landowner. She'd faced down polluters and bureaucrats before. "Morning," she called, descending the porch steps. "Problem with the view?" Rossi whipped around, eyes narrowing as he sized her up. Up close, he was even more imposing. Late 40s, maybe, with a scar tracing his jawline, faint but deliberate, like a signature. "You," he said, voice low and edged with gravel. "This you're doing?" He gestured to the pumps, still humming faintly. She crossed her arms. "My lake, my rules. No permit, no floating eyesore. You want to build? File the paperwork like everyone else." His laugh was short, bitter. "Everyone else doesn't get invitations to Rossi's table. That barge is gold, private access, views for miles. You just sank my opening night." He stepped closer, mud sucking at his polished shoes, but he didn't flinch. The air between them crackled, not just with anger, but something sharper. Curiosity, maybe. Elena felt it too, an unwelcome pull. Men like him didn't apologize, they claimed. One of his men muttered into a radio, static crackling. "Boss, we got a truck incoming. Looks like the crew." Rossi ignored him, eyes locked on hers. "You know who I am?" "Marco Rossi, the man who thinks lakes are free real estate." She held her ground, the chill wind off the exposed bed raising goosebumps on her skin. He smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Feisty, I like that. But you drained my investment. That's gonna cost you." Not a threat exactly, more a promise. As his crew arrived, shouting orders to assess the damage, Rossi lingered. "We'll talk. Properly. Over dinner. My treat. On dry land this time." Elena turned away, pulse racing. Dinner? With a man who built empires on shaky foundations? But as she retreated to her house, the distant whine of winches pulling at the barge, she wondered if she'd just invited the wolf to her door. And why the lake suddenly felt smaller. The water's return, a question only he could answer. The afternoon sun hung low over the exposed lake bed, turning the mud into a cracked mosaic of shadows. Elena Vargas leaned against the porch railing, her coffee long gone cold, watching the Rossi crew swarm like ants around the stranded barge. Winches groaned against the strain, cables snapping taut as they tried to refloat the hulking structure. The air reeked of diesel fumes and churned earth, a far cry from the serene lap of water that usually soothed her evenings. Marco Rossi had vanished in his SUV an hour ago, but his presence lingered like the scar on his jaw, a mark of old battles she didn't want to uncover. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, pulling her inside. The screen lit up with an unknown number, the area code Chicago proper. She hesitated, thumb hovering, then answered. "Vargas." "Ms. Vargas," a smooth voice replied, polished but edged, like a blade wrapped in silk. "Mr. Rossi sends his regards. Dinner tonight, 8 p.m. sharp. La Stella downtown. Black tie optional. Practicality preferred. No name, no pleasantries." The line clicked dead before she could protest. Elena stared at the phone, a knot twisting in her gut. La Stella? She'd heard of it. Rossi territory, a fortress disguised as fine dining, tucked into a converted warehouse by the river. Valets with earpieces, backroom deals sealed over tiramisu. Going meant stepping into his web, but refusing. That could escalate things. Her lake was her sanctuary. Bought with her parents' life savings, fought for in court against the very developers Rossi resembled. Curiosity gnawed at her. Why her lake? Why the rush? Permits aside, There had to be a reason he ignored the boundaries. She spent the day in her office, a converted sunroom overlooking the pumps still dripping residual water. Maps of the property sprawled across her desk, marked with red ink. The creek overflow, the county easements, the faint outline of an old rail spur that hugged the eastern shore. Draining the lake had exposed more than mud. Rusted pilings from some forgotten era, half-buried debris that hinted at industrial ghosts. But nothing explained the barge's placement, dead center, as if it knew the deepest point. Elena cross-referenced online records, her freelance skills kicking in. Rossi Enterprises had filed for waterfront variances elsewhere, but nothing here. A quick search pulled up news clips. Rossi, the rising dawn of the North Side, legitimizing his family's old smuggling routes into high-end ventures. Whispers of union ties, dockside enforcers. No arrests, but the feds circled like gulls. By evening, she'd made her choice. Not gratitude or fear, prudence. Face him on neutral ground, demand he pull out. She dressed simply. Dark jeans, a fitted blouse, boots for quick exits. No makeup, no illusions. The drive into the city blurred the rural quiet into urban pulse. Horns blaring, neon flickering against rain-slicked streets. La Stella loomed at the river's edge, its facade a blend of exposed brick and glass. Lights reflecting off the dark water like scattered diamonds. Valets nodded her through without a word, as if expected. Inside, the air was warm with garlic and aged wine, jazz murmuring from hidden speakers. Tables draped in white linen hosted suits and gowns, laughter low and controlled. A hostess, mid-20s, sharp-eyed, glided over. "Ms. Vargas, this way." No menu, no wait. She led Elena past a velvet rope to a private alcove overlooking the river, where Rossi waited alone, nursing a scotch. He rose as she approached, gesture fluid, commanding the space without effort. "You're punctual," he said, pulling out her chair. Up close, in the soft glow of pendant lamps, his eyes were a storm gray, assessing. The scar on his jaw caught the light, a thin white line against olive skin. "Sit, eat. We talk business after." Elena slid into the seat, the leather cool against her legs. "Business? You mean trespassing?" A waiter materialized with appetizers, prosciutto-wrapped figs, glistening with balsamic. Rossi waved him off. "Trespassing implies I didn't scout the lay of the land. Your lake's perfect, secluded, deep channel for deliveries. No prying eyes from the highway." He leaned back, fingers drumming the tablecloth. "But you turned it into a mud pit overnight. Ballsy. Most would have called the cops first." She speared a fig, the sweetness sharp on her tongue. "Cops take time. Pumps don't. And it's my water. What's the rush for Aqua Noir? Opening night sunk now, right?" His smile was tight, revealing even teeth. "Rush? Opportunities wait for no one. Syndicates from the east side sniffing around my roots. Rival crews want the river locked down. That barge? It's a statement. Neutral ground for talks, deals that keep the peace." He paused, signaling for wine, a bold red that poured like blood. "But you grounded it. Cost me a crew shift, engineer scrambling. Question is, why risk it? You could have sold out. Made a fortune." Elena sipped the wine, its tannins grounding her. "Sell? To you? My family's buried there, metaphorically. This isn't about money. It's principle." But even as she spoke, doubt flickered. The barge's position, too precise. Had they surveyed without her knowing? Drones? Night crews? Rossi studied her, the jazz swelling faintly. Principle, rare these days. His phone vibrated on the table, screen lighting with a text. He glanced, expression hardening for a split second, gone before she could read it. "My world runs on codes, Elena. You harm mine, I protect what's left, but I don't break innocence. That barge moves, or we negotiate. The main course arrived. Seared scallops over risotto, steam rising like fog. They ate in charged silence, the river outside churning under sodium lights. Elena's mind raced. The text, his flinch. A clue? Surveillance on her now? As dessert plates cleared, Rossi leaned in. Come see the refloat tomorrow. Don your dock. Bring your maps. We redraw lines. She met his gaze, the alcove feeling smaller. Redraw, or redraw me into your plans. His laugh rumbled low. Maybe both. But as he stood to escort her out, a shadow shifted in the hallway beyond. A man in a dark coat, earpiece glinting, eyes lingering too long on her face. Rossi didn't notice, or pretended not. Outside, rain pattered on the awning, her truck waiting. Elena drove home through the downpour, wipers slashing, wondering if the shadow was his or someone else's, and why the barge's hull, in her mind's eye, seemed to hide more than luxury decks. Perhaps a ledger of secrets, waiting for the water to rise again. The first blush of dawn painted the eastern sky in streaks of rose and gold, but the lake bed remained a desolate scar underfoot. Elena Vargas trudged across the cracked mud, her boots sinking with each step, the chill seeping through her jeans like a warning. The air hung heavy with the scent of wet clay and engine oil, punctuated by the rhythmic chug of portable generators dotted along the shore. Floodlights pierced the mist, casting long shadows that danced like specters around the barge. It loomed larger up close, its hull scarred from the grounding, rivets glinting dully where welders had patched hasty repairs overnight. Ropes snaked from the structure to a cluster of flatbed trucks, their tires mired in the slurry, winch motors whining in protest. She'd come alone, maps tucked under her arm, skepticism her only armor. Marco Rossi's invitation, more command than courtesy, had kept her tossing through the rain-lashed night. Why invite her to witness the refloat? To intimidate? Or to lure her deeper into whatever game he played? The shadow from La Stella lingered in her mind, that earpiece-wearing figure whose gaze had burned too hot. Surveillance? Rivals? Elena scanned the tree line as she approached, the pines whispering in the breeze, but saw only the Rossi crew, hard-hatted men barking orders, clipboards in hand, their faces etched with the fatigue of all-nighters. Rossi stood at the water's edge, or what passed for it now, arms crossed over a weathered leather jacket, his breath fogging in the crisp air. He turned as she neared, that scar on his jaw catching the light like a fresh reminder of unresolved debts. "Vargas," he greeted, voice rough from the cold or lack of sleep. No smile, just a nod that sized her up anew. "You brought the maps. Good. Let's see if your lines match mine." Elena unfolded the topographical sheet on the hood of a nearby truck, the paper crinkling under her fingers. "They match the counties. Your barge sits smack in the deepest channel, private property. Pull it out, and we're done. No redraws." He leaned in, tracing a finger along the rail spur notation she'd marked, close enough that she caught the faint spice of his cologne cutting through the diesel tang. Deepest channels key. Easy access for supplies. No dredging needed. But that spur? Old smuggling route from my grandfather's days. Ties the lake to the river system. Quiet, off the books. His eyes flicked to hers, probing. "You ever wonder what's buried under your water? Not just mud." Before she could retort, a crewman shouted from the barge's deck. "Boss! Cable's slipping, mud's too thick!" The winch groaned louder, a metallic screech echoing as the hull shifted, grinding against a submerged rock with a jolt that vibrated through the ground. Elena steadied herself on the truck, heart skipping. Rossi cursed under his breath, striding forward to bark orders. "Ease off. Reroute the tow lines. Use the auxiliary pump to loosen the bed." As the men scrambled, Elena edged closer to the barge, curiosity overriding caution. The structure's underbelly was exposed now, a labyrinth of struts and compartments that didn't scream, restaurant. One panel hung ajar from the grounding, revealing not kitchen plumbing, but reinforced shelving, empty, but sized for crates. She snapped a mental picture, pulse quickening. Supplies, or something shadier, like the dockside whispers suggested. A faint scuff mark on the metal caught her eye. Fresh, like a boot print, but inconsistent with the crew's heavy treads. Someone had been inside recently, prying. Rossi returned, wiping mud from his hands on a rag. See? Not so simple. Your stunt cost us a day. Rivals are circling. East Side crews think I'm vulnerable now. He paused, gaze sharpening on her face. That shadow last night at La Stella. You noticed. Elena's breath hitched. The guy in the coat? Yours? His jaw tightened, the scar pulling taut. Should be. But earpieces like that? Standard for my detail. Except he vanished before the valet log. Camera glitch, they say. He glanced toward the tree line, a subtle tension in his shoulders. My code's simple. Protect the family, the business. No innocents caught in the crossfire, but leaks happen. Turncoats whisper to the feds, or worse, the Valentinos. They want my routes. The name hung between them. Valentinos, the East Side Syndicate, known for torching competitors' shipments. Elena's mind raced, connecting dots. The barge's rush build. The precise positioning over the old spur. Not just a restaurant. A floating hub for discreet cargo, leveraging the lake's seclusion. So I'm collateral? You build on my land without asking? And now, I'm in your mess? Rossi stepped closer, voice dropping to a gravel murmur that cut through the machinery's hum. You're not collateral. You're unexpected. Feisty enough to drain a lake. Smart enough to see the angles. Join the refloat, or walk. But walking might not keep your pump safe. The possessiveness in his tone grated, a push against her autonomy that made her bristle. She wasn't his to claim, lake or no. Yet the pull was there. Gratitude for the honesty, or fear of isolation. The winch engaged again, cables straining, and the barge lurched free with a sucking pop, mud sluicing off its hull. Cheers rose from the crew, but Elena's eyes locked on a small object tumbling from the open panel. A burner phone, screen cracked, landing at her feet in the muck. She bent to retrieve it before Rossi could, flipping it over. No SIM, but a faint residue of ink on the back, numbers, perhaps a code. His eyes narrowed. What's that? Found it, she said, pocketing it swiftly. A clue, dropped by accident or sabotage. The tree line rustled again, a distant glint. Binoculars? Watchers. As the barge began its slow tow toward the refilling water, pumped back from the creek, Elena felt the noose tighten. Rossi's world wasn't just encroaching, it was seeping into hers, one secret at a time. And that phone? It buzzed once in her pocket, silent now, but promising answers, or a trap that could drown them both. If you're enjoying this story so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. The midday sun beat down mercilessly on the refilling lake, turning the air into a steamy haze that clung to Elena Vargas's skin like a second layer of doubt. The barge floated now, bobbing unsteadily on the returning water, its hull still smeared with mud that streaked the pristine white paint like war wounds. Crewmen hauled in the tow lines, their shouts mingling with the slap of waves against the shore and the low thrum of the auxiliary pump feeding water back from the creek. Elena stood a few paces from Marco Rossi, the burner phone a heavy secret in her jacket pocket, its single buzz echoing in her mind like a distant alarm. She hadn't dared check it yet, not with his eyes flicking her way every few seconds, that storm-gray gaze pulling at her resolve. Rossi wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, the leather jacket discarded on the truck hood, revealing a crisp white shirt rolled to his elbows. Tattoos peeked from the cuffs, faded anchors and script in Italian, relics of a life before boardrooms and bribes. It's free, he said, gesturing to the barge with a nod of satisfaction. Your pumps did a number, but we'll patch it. Now, about those maps. Let's talk boundaries inside. My truck, air conditioning, coffee. Unless you prefer the mud spa. Elena hesitated, the phone burning against her hip. Boundaries? His version likely meant expansion, not retreat. But the tree lines rustle earlier gnawed at her. Those glints could be binoculars. Or worse, scopes. Staying exposed felt like painting a target on her back. Fine, but no detours. And the maps stay with me. She followed him to the black SUV, its engine idling with a predatory purr. The interior cool and scented with leather polish and faint cigar smoke. One of his men, stocky with a radio clipped to his belt, drove, eyes on the rear view, while Rossi slid into the back beside her, close enough that their knees brushed. The vehicle bumped along the access road, gravel crunching under tires, the lake shrinking in the tinted windows. Elena pulled out the maps, spreading them across her lap. The spur you mentioned, it's abandoned, county sealed since the 70s. No access without my say. Your barge floats, but it doesn't own the water. Rossi leaned over, his shoulder warm against hers, tracing the faded rail line with a calloused finger. Sealed on paper. Reality's different. My family ran goods through there during Prohibition. Whiskey, then wartime surplus. Kept the books clean, but the roots? Eternal. His voice dropped, intimate in the confined space. I built Aqua Noir to honor that. Neutral spot for talks, unions, suppliers, even the Valentinos if they play nice. No blood on the decks. The possessiveness in his tone irked her, a velvet glove over an iron fist. He spoke of legacy, like it justified encroachment, his code, a shield for ambition. Elena shifted, creating space. Honor? By ignoring permits? My autonomy isn't negotiable, Marco. This lake's my quiet. Fought for, not for sale. He chuckled, low and rumbling, but his eyes stayed sharp. Autonomy's a luxury in my world. Loyalty binds tighter. You drained it to protect yours. Respect that. But now you're in the current. That shadow at La Stella. My guy's gone AWOL. Burner traces point east. Valentino sniffers. Her pulse spiked. The phone. She feigned adjusting the maps, slipping a hand into her pocket to thumb the device on. The screen flickered to life, cracked but functional, displaying a single incoming text from an unsaved number. Refloat compromised. Pull cargo tonight. V out. Time stamped an hour ago, just after the barge lurched free. Cargo? Not kitchen supplies. Something hidden, leveraging the old spur for discreet drops. She powered it down swiftly, heart hammering, as the SUV pulled up to her porch. Rossi exited first, scanning the yard with practiced vigilance, the overgrown flower beds, the weathered swing creaking in the breeze. Nice setup, isolated, vulnerable. He held the door for her, a gesture that felt more like escort than courtesy. Inside, the house smelled of aged wood and her morning coffee. Sunlight slanting through lace curtains onto the kitchen table where she unrolled the maps fully. As they pored over them, marking potential anchor points, a distant crack echoed, like a branch snapping, but sharper. Rossi froze, hand instinctively going to his belt before he caught himself. You hear that? Elena nodded, unease coiling in her gut. Deer, maybe. Or the wind. But the text burned in her memory, compromised. She glanced out the window, spotting nothing but the lake's gentle ripple, the barge now a distant silhouette. Yet the air felt thicker, charged with unseen eyes. His man radioed from outside. Static, then a clipped report. Perimeter clear, boss. But drone chatter up the valley. Could be surveyors. Rossi straightened, jaw set. Surveyors my ass. Valentino's testing. We accelerate. Barge operational by dusk. Elena, you in or out. Help me secure the channel, and your lake stays yours. Cross me. and the watchers become wolves. The push-pull twisted inside her, his protectiveness a cage, her independence screaming to bolt. Loyalty to her land versus the fear of isolation in this brewing storm. She met his gaze, the scar on his jaw a stark reminder of costs paid. I'm not your asset, but if Valentinos are circling, I want proof. Show me the cargo manifest. No secrets. His expression flickered. Surprise, then calculation. Manifest? That's trust earned. He pulled a slim ledger from his jacket, flipping to a page of coded entries. Dates, weights, innocuous labels like linen shipments. But the numbers didn't add up, too heavy for tablecloths. As he explained, a low hum built outside, growing to a roar. Elena rushed to the window, Rossi at her side. A speedboat sliced across the lake, wake churning white, heading straight for the barge. No markings, just two figures in dark hoods, one hefting what looked like a grappling hook. Son of a... Rossi snarled, grabbing his radio. Intruders! Lock it down! The boat veered close, the hook arcing toward the hull, but a Rossi crew dinghy intercepted, engines revving in pursuit. Gunshots? No. Shouts, then the crack of wood as the intruders aborted, peeling away toward the river outlet. The chase vanished into the mist, leaving ripples that lapped at her dock like accusations. Elena turned, breath shallow. That your proof? Or did your leak invite them? The ledger lay open, a subtle discrepancy glaring now. One entry crossed out, initials V beside it. Valentino, or a turncoat closer? Rossi's face darkened, the code cracking under pressure. As sirens wailed faintly from the highway, cops or feds, he pocketed the book. We move tonight, safe house by the docks. You come, or they come for you next. She pocketed the burner again, its weight a tether to the unknown. The lake, once her sanctuary, now mirrored the chaos, surface calm, depths treacherous. But whose hand gripped the currents? His, the rival's, or the ghost in her phone? As the SUV's door slammed outside, ready to whisk them away, Elena wondered if trust was the real cargo at stake, sinking or salvable in the rising tide. The SUV tore down the winding access road, gravel pinging off the undercarriage like scattered gunfire, as the distant wail of sirens faded into the valley's echo. Elena Vargas gripped the armrest, the leather creaking under her fingers, while Marco Rossi sat rigid beside her, his phone pressed to his ear in a staccato of barked orders. The air inside the vehicle hummed with tension, laced with the sharp tang of adrenaline sweat and the faint ozone from the radio's static bursts. Outside, the lake blurred into a silver streak, the barge now a vulnerable speck adrift, its decks empty under the relentless midday sun. Double the patrols on the channel, Rossi snapped into the phone, his free hand drumming the seat back. And get that manifest scrubbed. V's mark means inside job. He hung up, exhaling sharply, his scar twitching like a live wire. The driver, a silent brute named Gino from the name tag on his vest, glanced in the rear view, eyes flicking to Elena before returning to the road. She felt exposed, a pawn shuttled from her sanctuary to his shadowed empire, the burner phone in her pocket a ticking bomb she hadn't detonated yet. "Why the safe house?" she asked, voice steady despite the knot in her chest. "My place is fortified. Pumps, fences, I don't run from shadows." Rossi turned to her, gray eyes stormy under furrowed brows. "Shadows with hooks and speedboats? That's not a prank, Elena. Valentinos don't probe, they strike. Your lake's a blind spot now. Exposed bed showed too much." He leaned closer, the heat of him invading her space, a mix of protectiveness and possession that chafed her independence. "My code. Family first. You're in the splash zone. Come willingly, or I make it non-negotiable." The word family hung heavy, laced with his legacy, the old roots, the vows etched in ink and blood. Elena bristled, her ethics clashing against his ironclad rules. She wasn't kin, just a landowner who'd upended his plans. Yet the pull tugged at her. His raw honesty amid the deceit, a man restrained by principles in a world of wolves. Non-negotiable? That's not protection, that's control. I drained your barge to draw a line, not cross into your war. Gino cleared his throat, veering onto the highway where semis thundered past, their exhaust fumes seeping through the vents. Boss, tail spotted, black sedan, 2 cars back. Valentino plates? Rossi twisted to peer through the tinted rear window, the sodium glare off wet asphalt flashing like warning signals. Shake 'em. Next exit, loop the industrial park. The SUV surged, merging with a roar that drowned the radio's chatter. Elena's pulse raced, the chase a visceral reminder of the stakes, rival factions closing in, her quiet life collateral. She slipped the burner from her pocket, shielding it with the map still crumpled on her lap. The screen lit up under her thumb. No new messages, but the call log showed 3 outgoing pings to a Chicago exchange, timestamps aligning with the refloat chaos. "Whose phone?" Rossi demanded, catching the glow. His hand shot out, but she yanked it back, the leather seat squeaking in the sudden shift. "Found it on the barge. Dropped during the grounding. Your cruise?" She met his gaze, challenging, the vehicle's swerve pressing her against him. The industrial park loomed ahead, chain-link fences rattling in the wind, warehouses hulking like forgotten titans, their corrugated sides echoing the diesel growl of idling trucks. He snatched the maps instead, scanning them as Gino executed a tight U-turn, tires screeching on oil-slicked pavement. The sedan hesitated, then peeled off toward the riverfront, but the unease lingered. "Not mine. Burners are one use, disposed after." "That one's got residue. Check the back." Elena flipped it over, the ink smudge resolving into a partial plate. IL 7V92. Valentino Vanity? Her mind whirred, cross-referencing mental files from her consulting days. Shipping manifests often hid under innocuous tags, but plates like that screamed syndicate muscle. The safe house materialized at the dock's edge, a nondescript brick building masquerading as a bait shop. Its windows blacked out with foil, the air thick with the briny reek of the river and rotting fish guts from nearby bins. Gino killed the engine, scanning the lot, empty except for a rusted forklift and stacked crates stamped with generic import labels. Rossi ushered her inside, his hand light on her elbow, a gesture that felt both guiding and confining. The interior was sparse, metal desks cluttered with ledgers, a bank of monitors flickering with grainy feeds from hidden cams along the waterfront. The hum of generators vibrated the floor, mingling with the distant horn of a barge navigating the locks. 2 men rose from folding chairs. Security, earpieces coiled like snakes, nodding curtly. "Perimeter's wired, boss. No tails since the shake." "Good. Coffee for Ms. Vargas. Black." Rossi pulled her to a side table, spreading the maps beside his ledger. The monitors cast a blue pallor on his face, highlighting the lines of fatigue. "That phone's a leak. Plate matches a Valentino runner, low level but connected. They knew the refloat schedule. Someone tipped the cargo hold." Elena sipped the bitter brew, its steam curling like river fog, as she pieced it together. Cargo hold? Not just a restaurant, then. The shelving I saw, crates via the spur. What's really floating on Aqua Noir? Smuggled goods? That's why the rush. No inspections. His jaw clenched, the code fracturing under her scrutiny. Loyalty versus her unyielding ethics. He wanted alliance. She demanded truth. Not smuggled. Legit imports, rare wines, art shipments for high rollers. But rivals see opportunity. My grandfather's roots kept families fed during lean times. I honor that. No innocents harmed. He tapped the ledger, revealing a crossed entry. V92 delivery, 2 tons, rerouted. The initial matched the phone. Turncoat in my crew, maybe the AWOL shadow. Cost me a shipment last month. Now they're probing your lake for weak points. The monitors beeped. A feed from the lake cam showing her dock, empty but for the pump's faint drip. Then a glitch, static, then clear. A figure in the tree line, hooded, planting something at the water's edge. Elena's blood chilled. There, surveillance or sabotage. Rossi lunged for the controls, zooming in. The figure vanished into the pines, but a glint remained. A device, small, blinking red. Tampered sensor. They'll flood the channel or worse, cut the pumps during refloat. He radioed the crew, voice urgent. Evac the barge, storm incoming, cover story. Outside, thunder rumbled, real or staged, the sky bruising purple as rain lashed the windows. Elena's independence warred with the fear coiling in her gut. Alone, she'd be a target, with him, entangled in betrayals. We traced that plate. My contacts at the DMV owe me. No feds, just quiet pull. It was a concession, a bridge over the chasm of suspicion. Rossi nodded, a flicker of respect breaking through the storm in his eyes. Together, then. But trust the code. I'll shield you. As Gino burst in, soaked, reporting the sedan circling the docks again, Elena pocketed the phone, its secrets a fragile alliance. The rain hammered harder, turning the river to froth, but the real flood was the questions. Who was V, and would their next move submerge her world entirely? Rain lashed the safe house windows like a vengeful tide, blurring the river's frothy churn into a gray smear beyond the foil-covered glass. Inside, the air grew thick with the metallic bite of damp concrete and the acrid whiff of overbrewed coffee cooling on the desk. Elena Vargas paced the narrow space between the monitors and the cluttered table. The burner phone clutched in her fist like a grenade pin half pulled. Marco Rossi hunched over the ledger, his broad shoulders casting jagged shadows under the fluorescent hum, while Gino loomed by the door, radio crackling with intermittent reports from the lake crew. Perimeter holding, boss, but that sensor's fried, water levels spiking unnatural. Elena stopped, her boots squeaking on the linoleum. Unnatural how? The creek overflow's controlled. My valves are locked. She glanced at the feed, the tampered device now half submerged in the rising murk, its red blink pulsing like a heartbeat. The storm had escalated from drizzle to deluge, wind howling through the dock's skeletal cranes outside, rattling loose chains in a metallic dirge. Rossi looked up, his gray eyes shadowed by fatigue, the scar on his jaw a pale slash in the dim light. Diversion. Valentino staged this. Pump sabotage to mask a cargo grab. Your lake's filling too fast. Barge'll drift off anchor if we don't reinforce. He stood, the chair scraping back with a grind that echoed her grinding nerves. His presence filled the room, a wall of restrained power that both shielded and smothered, his code a vow he wore like armor. But Elena felt the push, his loyalty demanding her surrender, her independence recoiling like a spring-loaded trap. I'm not waiting for your crew, she said, voice cutting through the rain's roar. That plate, IL7V92. I call my DMV contact now. Quiet, no traces. She pulled out her own phone, the screen's glow illuminating the ledger's coded scrawls. Weights mismatched to art shipments, dates aligning with riverlock schedules. Human error or deliberate fog. The burner in her other hand vibrated once, silent mode, but insistent. She ignored it, dialing a number from her contacts. An old colleague, Javier, who owed her for exposing a developer's wetland scam last year. Rossi stepped closer, his hand hovering near hers, not touching but close enough to feel the heat. Careful. Lines like that get tapped. Feds or rivals. My world's wired, yours isn't. The possessiveness grated, a velvet leash tightening around her autonomy. He protected what he claimed, but at what cost to her freedom? Loyalty to his legacy clashed with her ethics. No blind trust in a man whose legit imports reeked of shadowed holds. Javier picked up on the second ring, his voice tinny over the storm's static. Elena, This weather's hell. What's up? Quick favor. Run a plate. Illinois. Vanity 7V92. Owner. History. Nothing official. She kept it clipped, eyes on Rossi, who nodded once, grudging respect flickering in his gaze. Pause on the line, keyboard clacks faint. Got it. Black Lincoln, registered to Vito Moretti. Clean record, but... Hang on. More typing, then a low whistle. Ties to East Side unions. Fines for dock violations, nothing sticks. Last seen at a warehouse on Halstead. Shipping manifests list him as driver for Valentino Imports. You poking bears? More like swatting at gnats, she lied, hanging up as the door banged open. Gino's frame filled the threshold, rain dripping from his jacket like blood from a fresh wound, face etched with urgency. Boss, lake feeds glitching again. Crew reports a second boat, ghosting the inlet, and the pumps. Someone's overriding remotely. Rossi swore in Italian, the words a guttural rumble that vibrated the air. He grabbed his jacket, the leather creaking as he shrugged it on. Vito Moretti, Valentino runner. The AWOL shadows his link. They want the spur route. Your drain exposed the access code buried in the bed. Old rail markers my family keyed decades ago. He turned to Elena, the storm outside mirroring the tempest in his eyes. We go now. Secure the barge. Trace the override. You with me, or they turn your sanctuary into a sieve. The human conflict tore at her. Fear of isolation versus the thrill of alliance. His code promising safety, but demanding fealty. She pocketed both phones, the burner's weight a reminder of betrayals lurking. With you, for the lake. But no more secrets. Show me the real manifest on the way. They piled into the SUV, Gino gunning the engine as wipers slashed futilely against the downpour. The docks blurred into a watercolor of sodium lights on wet asphalt, warehouses looming like silent sentinels, their loading bays yawning dark. Rossi pulled a tablet from the glove box, swiping to an encrypted file. Detailed logs, not the sanitized ledger. Cargo's mixed. Wines for the restaurant, but underdeck. Encrypted drives, union docks. Leverage against rivals. Vito, marked the reroute. He's the turncoat, feeding cords to his old crew. Elena's stomach twisted, the pieces slotting. The burner from the barge, the speedboat probe, now the pump hack. Realistic logistics. Remote jammers common in dockside games, human greed the weak link. The SUV skidded onto a pier, waves crashing against pilings with explosive slaps, salt spray stinging through cracked windows. Floodlights from the Rossi dinghy cut the mist, illuminating the barge's silhouette, anchor chains straining like veins under pressure. As they boarded a smaller patrol boat, engines coughing to life amid the gale, Elena spotted it. A faint glow from the tree line across the inlet. Binoculars? Or a signal flare? Rossi followed her gaze, radioing his men. Eyes on the east bank. Flush 'em. But the override hit then, pumps whining erratically, water surging around the hull in unnatural eddies. The boat rocked violently, Elena gripping the rail, cold spray soaking her blouse, the chill biting like betrayal. Overrides from a van. Mobile jammer, half-mile out, Gino shouted over the roar, pointing to a blip on the tablet's tracker. Rossi steered them toward it, the river's current fighting every inch, foam hissing against the bow. Elena's mind raced. Vito's plate, the V initial. Inside job confirmed. But how deep? A crewman? Or someone closer, testing Rossi's code? The van materialized through the sheets of rain, black and unmarked, idling on a service road paralleling the docks. Tires spun in mud as it fled, but Rossi's boat cut across, spotlight pinning it like a suspect in interrogation. Ram the bank, force 'em out, he ordered, voice thunderous. The impact jarred, wood splintering, the van fishtailing into a chain-link barrier with a metallic crunch. Doors flew open. 2 figures bolted. One Vito Moretti, she recognized from Javier's quick sketch on her phone. The other, a wiry shadow with an earpiece matching the Listella ghost. Rossi leaped to the pier first, Gino covering with a flashlight beam that sliced the dark. "Moretti, you sold the route. Your mark's on my books." The chase splashed through puddles, feet pounding wet concrete, Elena trailing, heart slamming against her ribs. Moretti spun, desperation twisting his face, but a Rossi enforcer tackled him, cuffs clicking like finality. The wiry one vanished into the warehouses, a door slamming shut behind him. Elena cornered the van, yanking the back open. Inside, a laptop blinking with pump controls, wires snaking to a jury-rigged antenna. Sabotage toolkit. Common tech, black market sourced, no magic, just malice. She snatched the drive, rain dripping onto the keys as Rossi hauled Moretti up by the collar. "Why?" Rossi growled, face inches from the man's, the code demanding answers before fists. "Family ties? Or greed?" Moretti spat blood-tinged rain, eyes darting. "Valentino's pay better. Your barge hides too much. Drives with names, routes. The lake was the key. Her drain showed the markers." His gaze flicked to Elena, accusatory. "You started this, pulling the water. Now it's war." Rossi shoved him to Gino, turning to her, breath ragged. "War we end. But the ghost's loose, earpiece man. He knows the safe house codes." The implications sank in. Infiltration deeper, betrayal's tendrils reaching. As patrol lights flashed in the distance, cops alerted by the chase. Elena clutched the drive, its data a potential revelation or noose. The storm eased to a patter, but the real tempest brewed. Whose side held the final leak? And would plugging it cost her the lake? Or him his code? If this tale already has you hooked, hit the like button. It helps us bring more hidden stories to light. The patrol lights sliced through the lingering rain like accusatory fingers, bathing the crumpled van in strobing blue and red. Elena Vargas stood drenched on the pier, the laptop drive clutched in her numb fingers, its plastic casing slick with river mist and mud. The air reeked of scorched rubber from the van's spun tires and the briny tang of the Chicago River, now calm but deceptive after the storm's fury. Marco Rossi loomed over Vito Moretti, who knelt cuffed on the wet concrete, his face a mask of bruised defiance under Gino's unyielding grip. The enforcer's radio crackled faintly, cops closing in from the highway, sirens a distant wail that promised complications Rossi couldn't afford. "You think this ends it?" Rossi growled, his voice a low thunder that cut through the patter of residual drops on metal roofs. He crouched, eye level with the traitor, the scar on his jaw flexing like a fault line ready to crack. "The ghost, your earpiece shadow. Where's he holed up? Safe house? The barge?" Moretti coughed, spitting rainwater, his eyes darting to Elena before settling on the ground. "You built your empire on old roots, Marco, but times change. Valentino's own the East Docks now, your legit cargo. It's leverage they crave. Names, routes, the works. The lake was the blind spot. Her drain lit it up like a flare." He jerked his chin toward Elena, a sneer twisting his lip. "She belongs in this now. You can't protect what you can't control." Rossi hauled him up by the collar, the fabric tearing slightly, but Gino intervened, dragging Moretti toward a waiting crew van idling in the shadows of the warehouse. "We'll talk deeper at the lockup," Rossi said, shoving him inside with finality. The door slammed, engine revving as it vanished into the night, taillights bleeding red into puddles. Rossi turned to Elena, his jacket sodden and clinging, revealing the taut lines of muscle beneath. Water beaded on his lashes, but his gaze burned, possessive, protective, a storm not yet spent. "You heard him. You're in the crosshairs. We move. Secondary safe house upriver. No arguments." Elena's independence flared, hot against the chill seeping into her bones. She wasn't his to command, not some damsel in his Mafia fairy tale. The lake was her fight, born of ethics and legacy, not his codes and vows. Yet fear gnawed at the edges, Moretti's words a mirror to her doubts, the escaped ghost a specter that could turn her sanctuary into a trap. Arguments? This is my mess too. That drive, it's got the override logs. We crack it here now before your secondary becomes a coffin. She held up the device, rain dripping from its edges. The faint glow of its indicator light a beacon in the gloom. Gino nodded toward the patrol boat, its deck slick and rocking gently against the pilings. Cops will be here in 5. Boats faster. Evade the main drag. Rossi hesitated, then acquiesced with a curt dip of his head, the concession a rare crack in his armor. They boarded swiftly, the engine coughing to life amid the scent of diesel and wet fiberglass. Elena huddled in the cabin, Rossi at the helm, his hands steady on the wheel as the river's current tugged them upstream. Sodium lights from distant bridges flickered like faulty stars, casting elongated shadows that danced across the water. She powered up the drive on her phone, a makeshift tether via USB adapter from the glove box kit, common tech for field ops, no high-end hacks needed. Files bloomed. Pump schematics overlaid with timestamps, remote commands routed through a burner VPN. One folder caught her eye. V92 Ops. Messages timestamped from the refloat. Ghost confirms markers exposed. Barge holds secure for extract. Target. Rossi's ledger on night run. Attached schematics showed the barge's underdeck. Not just shelving, but reinforced compartments for data drives, encrypted files on union payoffs, rival weak points, the kind of intel that could topple factions or buy peace. But a subfile glitched open. Coordinates for her dock, marked collateral, drain source, neutralize post-grab. Her breath caught, the cabin's humid air closing in. They're coming for the pumps, my pumps, to flood the lake permanent, bury the spur evidence. She showed him the screen, the green glow illuminating his face, hardening the lines of worry. Surveillance logs followed, camera angles from the tree line, guard rotations noted with behavioral tells. One crewman pausing too long at shifts, a subtle bribe signal. Rossi throttled down as they neared a shadowed inlet. The secondary safe house, a low-slung boathouse disguised among derelict piers, its exterior weathered like the river's forgotten bones. Neutralize? Over my code. No innocence. That's the line I don't cross. But his voice wavered, the weight of betrayal pressing. Loyalty to his men, forged in past losses. A brother lost to a rival hit, whispered in town lore, clashed with the fear of losing control. He tied off the boat, ushering her inside with a hand at her back, firm but not forceful. The interior smelled of oiled wood and stale takeout, a single bulb swinging from exposed beams, casting swings of light over cots and a bank of dusty monitors. Gino secured the door, jamming a bar across it while Rossi radioed the lake crew. Static, then a faint reply. Perimeters jammed. Comms glitch. Storm residue or... The line cut, leaving silence thicker than the fog rolling in off the water. Elena's pulse thrummed. The ghost's work, no doubt. A simple signal jammer, trucked in from any electronics depot, disrupting the frequencies without a trace. Outside, the river lapped insistently. A low hum building from the darkness. Generators? Or engines? We check the drives deeper, she said, plugging in at a makeshift station, her fingers flying over keys. Partial decryption revealed emails. The ghost, alias Echo, coordinating with Valentino mid-levels, but one thread looped back. An access code for Rossi's own security app, stolen from an internal leak. Your AWOL shadow. He's got your codes. The safe house. The first one. It's compromised. They're hitting it now. Drawing you out. Rossi's face paled under the bulb's glare, the realization a gut punch. Victory over Moretti felt hollow, the cost mounting, exposure of his roots, the erosion of his code. He grabbed a go bag from the wall, stuffing in the ledger and a spare burner. We extract the barge cargo. Night run now. Or they burn it all. His eyes met hers, the push-pull electric. His protectiveness a vow, her autonomy the spark that ignited it. Come with. Trust the play, I'll get you clear. But as the hum outside resolved into the growl of approaching motors, 2, maybe 3, cutting through the inlet like predators, Elena froze. The monitors flickered to life unbidden, a hacked feed showing her dock, flames licking the pump house, staged fire blooming in the night, shadows darting with accelerant cans. The ghost's diversion, real and organized, turning the environment hazardous. Blackout imminent, exits jammed by the rising tide of rivals. Whose hand lit the match? Valentino's full assault, or a deeper turncoat sacrificing all for the grab? The first shot cracked the boathouse window, glass shattering like fragile trust. As Rossi pulled her down, the world narrowing to survival and the fragile bond teetering on the edge. Glass shards rained down like brittle stars, skittering across the boathouse floor amid the acrid sting of gunpowder and splintered wood. Elena Vargas hit the deck hard, her palms scraping raw on the rough planks, heart slamming against her ribs as Marco Rossi's weight shielded her. The bulb swung wildly overhead, casting erratic shadows that twisted the room into a funhouse of threats. Outside, the river's lap turned frantic, waves slapping the pilings in rhythm with the muffled shouts, and the growl of boat engines circling the inlet like sharks scenting blood. "Stay low," Rossi hissed, his breath hot against her ear, one arm pinning her while his free hand drew a compact pistol from his jacket. Sleek, matte black, no flourish, just cold utility. The shot's echo reverberated, followed by a second, thudding into the wall above them with a puff of plaster dust that coated her tongue like chalk. Gino dove behind an overturned crate, returning fire through a jagged hole in the door, the bark of his weapon sharp against the storm's dying rumble. Elena's mind raced, piecing the chaos, the hacked feed, the fire at her dock, a staged blaze to draw Rossi's crew thin, expose the barge for the grab. The ghost, Echo, had played them all. His infiltration a masterstroke of human error and tech sleight. Stolen codes from a bribed guard, jammers sourced from any warehouse black market. The pump override a simple app exploit. No impossibilities, just the grind of rival ambition grinding against Rossi's code. She fumbled for the laptop drive, shoving it into her pocket as bullets whined, one grazing the monitor bank in a shower of sparks. The screens died, plunging them into near darkness lit only by muzzle flashes and the distant sodium glow from the docks. "We can't hold here," she whispered, the push of his body a cage she both resented and craved, his protectiveness a vow clashing with her fierce autonomy. Loyalty demanded he shield her, but fear whispered she'd become another casualty in his legacy's shadow. "The cargo. It's bait. Echo wants you chasing ghosts while they hit the barge." Rossi nodded, gray eyes fierce in the gloom, the scar on his jaw a stark white line against stubble darkened by sweat. "Bait or not, we end it. Gino. Flank left. Draw him to the pier." His man grunted assent, slipping out a side hatch into the murk, footsteps splashing through puddles. Rossi hauled Elena up, his grip iron on her wrist, pulling her toward a concealed panel in the rear wall, a bolt hole to a narrow walkway hugging the riverbank, overgrown with reeds that whipped like accusations in the wind. They burst into the night, the air thick with river brine and the oily reek of idling motors. 2 boats idled in the inlet, silhouettes of Valentino runners, low-slung speeders with muffled props, their crews hunched over rails, scanning with night vision scopes that glinted green. A third figure darted from the tree line, the ghost, wiry and hooded, earpiece trailing like a venomous tail, sprinting toward a waiting van on the service road. Rossi raised his pistol, but Elena grabbed his arm. "The drive. It's got his comms logs. Shoot the tires. We need him alive." A bullet zipped past, clipping a reed and sending sap spraying across her cheek, warm and metallic. Rossi fired twice, the van's front tire exploding with a hiss, the vehicle fishtailing into a ditch with a crunch of undercarriage on gravel. The ghost bailed, rolling into the mud, but Gino's shout echoed from the pier, diversion holding. As patrol lights pierced the fog, Rossi's secondary crew arriving in a convoy of unmarked trucks, engines roaring like avenging thunder. The climax unfolded in a blur of motion. Runners abandoning their boats as federals, alerted by the fire's glow, swarmed the docks, badges flashing under floodlights. No graphic frenzy, just the credible press of numbers and logistics. Rossi's reinforcements jamming exits with barriers, the river's current herding the speeders into shallows where they grounded with grinding protests. Elena sprinted with Rossi toward the van, the ghost scrambling up, face revealed in a slash of headlights. Gaunt, mid-30s, eyes wide with cornered rat fury. Not a stranger. One of Rossi's own drivers, from the refloat crew, behavioral tells she'd missed. The lingering glances at shifts, the offhand questions about her pumps. "You," Rossi snarled, tackling him into the muck, pistol pressed to his temple without firing. "Echo, my ledger, your mark. Why betray the code?" The man wheezed, rain mixing with mud on his face, the earpiece dangling broken. "Code? Your routes starve us out. Valentino's offered shares, real power, not scraps." He laughed bitterly, glancing at Elena. She drained it all into the open. Markers, holds, your empire's bones exposed. Sirens wailed closer, cops cordoning the scene with yellow tape fluttering like surrender flags. Gino cuffed the ghost, hauling him to the trucks as Moretti's van, earlier secured, pulled up. The traitor bundled inside for a quiet handover to Rossi's associates, away from prying eyes. The threat revealed, organized, rooted in greed and old grievances, the barge's cargo intact but the spur route compromised. Feds now circling with warrants brewing from the fire's arson traces. Victory cost them. Rossi's arm grazed by a stray shot, blood seeping through his sleeve in a dark bloom, staining the riverbank red. Elena's dock pumps ruined, the lake's bed scarred with fire's char, her solitude shattered. Exposure loomed, whispers of syndicates fracturing, Rossi's legit facade cracking under scrutiny. But as dawn crept over the warehouses, painting the water in hesitant gold, they stood on the pier, the convoy idling behind. "You saved more than the barge," Rossi said, voice gravel rough, binding a makeshift tourniquet with his belt. His eyes held hers, the possessiveness softened to something deeper, trust forged in the flood. "My code. It bends for you. The lake's yours. We build together, or not at all." Elena met his gaze, the pull undeniable, autonomy yielding to chosen alliance, ethics entwined with his restrained power. No grand spoils, just the quiet pledge of protection, a future sketched in shared scars. The true treasure wasn't roots or ledgers, but this, loyalty outlasting the chaos, memory binding them like family found in the depths. Weeks blurred into a tentative peace, the lake refilling under her watchful eye, the barge towed away for repairs on neutral waters. Rossi's world receded but didn't vanish. Dinners at La Stella turned to quiet walks along her shore, his code evolving. No more encroachments, just vows kept in the hush of pine-scented evenings. The adventure's echo lingered. Betrayals mended with quiet arrests, rivals scattered by the Fed's net, but the real legacy was theirs, transformed by danger into something unbreakable. Power faded, trust endured. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of loyalty, danger, and found family. See you in the next story.